Ever since he burst into the limelight, Vinny Jones has presented only one image of himself to the world, on and off the soccer field. As the leader of Wimbledon's infamous Crazy Gang, Jones was the most vilified player of his generation, portrayed as a brainless thug with a violent temper.
He was very unpredictable in the early stages. You didn't know what he was going to do. He was waiting to explode. And if he exploded, then boy, you better get out of the way.
In a career spanning 5 clubs, he was sent off a dozen times for violent tackles and clashing with referees. Unlike other hard men, Jones' brutal tactics were often planned and premeditated. By adding a psychological weapon to his armoury, he almost turned intimidation into an art form.
He obviously put the opposition under a lot of pressure because he would be looking them in the eye. He looks quite ferocious. He would be questioning certain things about their personality, their ability, and a lot of players found that intimidating and very hard to cope with.
And when film director Guy Ritchie wanted a real tough guy for gangster movie Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Vinny Jones, with his closely cropped hairstyle, a mean and moody demeanour, fitted the bill exactly.
And it is a lovely tan, by the way, when you've got more pressing priorities at hand.
Tell Harry, did I say speak?
He is what he is, and he does things that, you know, you would scream at if anyone else did. But if he hadn't done all those things, I probably wouldn't have noticed him.
A star was born in that role. You know, £14 million later, you know, we're laughing all the way to the bank. Thanks, Vinny.
At the age of 35, Vinny Jones is Britain's most celebrated bad boy. His image entrenched in the nation's psyche. But how did the football thug everyone loved to hate become the people's favourite? And beneath the glamorous veneer of success, who is the real Vinny Jones? The tranquil setting of rural Hertfordshire offers little clue to what was to become of Vincent Peter Jones. His was a happy childhood, growing up in the leafy village of Bedmond near Watford. Vincent was football mad. His dad managed the Bedmond under-12s and Vincent was his star player, good enough to be on Watford's books. His special bond with his father was reinforced by their regular shooting trips. Here, the photographer captured the mood perfectly. Vinny, aged 12, not only looking the part, but ironically perfectly at ease with a double-barrel shotgun. But Vincent's world was about to shatter. His parents' marriage began to collapse, leaving emotional scars he would never forget.
He had to listen to Mum and Dad arguing downstairs while he sat on the stairs, and at times cuddled his younger sister Anne, trying to protect her from what was going on beneath them. He remembers that with a great deal of pain.
His mother finally walked out of the marital home on the eve of his 14th birthday, Vincent clinging to her as he begged her to stay. Almost overnight, Vincent, always a bit of a handful, went out of control, truanting from school and in trouble with the police. Former Wimbledon physio Derek French lived in Bedmond and remembers Jones, the wayward adolescent.
First time I saw him, I think he was drunk in the social club when he was about 14. I don't think, not badly drunk, but drunk enough for a kid of his age. But he was, a Jack the lad. Even in them days, he lived his life as if his pants were on fire. And he was a bit of a leery boy at that stage. But there was quite a few on that estate, so he actually fitted in quite well.
He was now at war with his dad. Finally, after one spectacular...
...to a black dustbin liner and just went off to find work. He finished up washing pots and pans in a public school somewhere. And on his first day there, when they took him to his tiny bedroom along a dingy and what he called frightening corridor, he got into his little room and he emptied his black dustbin liner, and on the mantelpiece he put all his little trophies that he'd won for schoolboy football.
Still just 16, Vincent lost contact with both parents as he drifted between hostels and dead-end jobs, until an old mate from Bedmond came to the rescue. It was 1982, the year that Britain went to war over the Falklands. Vincent's best friend from school days heard he was lonely and persuaded him to come back to Bedmond. Together they tried to join up, but his mate was turned down. Deprived of the chance of fighting the Argies, Vincent and his 30-strong gang of mates carried the battle into the pubs and clubs of Watford, with Vinny loving every minute of it.
We were always in scrapes because we used to bump into other gangs from other parts that we didn't know, and obviously it was bound to go off.
The gang culture was bonded by their love of football. Vincent hadn't played at all since leaving home, and Bedmond welcomed back its lost soldier.
He was absolutely outstanding. We used to just give him the ball and he'd do everything with it. He was a really good player.
He just had all the skill, unbelievable tricks. You couldn't get the ball off him, and he'd run rings around you, literally everyone.
Vincent had been taking shelter wherever he could find it, and the new Bedmond manager couldn't believe the state of the youngster.
And he had a pair of jeans on with his knees hanging out and backside hanging out, if you like. A pair of hobnail boots and a dirty shirt on. And I thought, who's this? Bear in mind, he was a 17-year-old kid living with a 35-year-old bloke at the time. It's like a doss house. And it weren't really nice for a kid to live in.
John and Wendy Moore took pity. They offered their sofa for a few days. He was to stay for 5 years.
Wendy got hold of me and said, what do you think about Vince coming to stay with us? So I said to her, well, it's not up to me, love. I said, I get up in the morning, I go out, I come back late. I said, you got the extra washing. I said, and the kids have got to get with Vince. I said, it's mainly the rest of you. She said, well, we don't mind. And I said, I'm the last one to know about this, and
These are the very first pictures of Vinny Jones in action. He's wearing the number 10 shirt. By now he was turning out for a number of teams in the area, including the college in Bushey where he'd got a job as a groundsman. Always a small child, he'd suddenly shot up and could put himself about. In this cup game, Vinny was made man of the match, ironically by the referee. Football had given him a sense of self-esteem and a family of sorts. It was the college gardening job that led to his big break. When a semi-professional club, Wealdstone, turned up to train there, Vinny pestered them to join in.
He wanted to be involved with absolutely everything. If the cones wanted to be put out, he wanted to do it. Pump the balls up, he would just want to get involved with the club. Once he started training with us, unbelievable. Fit, raring to go, raw talent.
But a complete nutcase.
Yeah, nutcase. Every now and again, you go out training and come back in, there'd be rabbits and pheasants hanging on the hook, and you wonder, and then you go, oh, Jonesy's been out shooting again.
After weeks as a fringe player, Vinny Jones was unleashed into the football world in an FA Cup tie at Reading. The non-league giant killers were struggling and brought on their secret weapon. Within a minute, the mad dog wreaked havoc. The first glimpse of what professional football had to look forward to.
Vinny launched himself, a double-footed tackle on one of their players, so all hell let loose. And there's Vinny, that old with a bloke like that, about to thump him, but never got sent off. That's quite unbelievable.
Vinny was a reserve player on £28 a week. Although still living at Johnny Moore's house, he was back on speaking terms with his dad, working for him as a hod carrier on building sites. But his big career break was on the horizon.
If you change your mind, I'm the first in line. Honey, I'm still free.
1986, and Sweden's frozen north was suddenly welcoming the aspiring part-time player.
If you got no place to go when you're feeling down.
To get Vinny more experience, his club loaned him to a third division team, and he was met at the airport by Mark McNeil, another Englishman trying his luck there. McNeil became an instant mate. Within hours of touchdown, with the temperature at -6, Vinny had his first training session.
When it was that cold, we was giving tracksuit bottoms to play in because it was cold. But I said to Jonah, "You've got a pair of tracksuit bottoms over there with your number on. They're yours." Trying to get him in the groove and get him to know the players. And Jonah said, "Listen, no way. I'm an Englishman. We don't play with tracksuit bottoms."
And it's snowing. It will be more than 1 decimeter snow on the pitch. One player have short trousers. Vinny Jones, a hard man.
The two Englishmen led the village to their most successful season in 20 years. 2-1 down in the cup against First Division opponents, the 21-year-old began ordering his older and more experienced teammates around.
When we come into the dressing room in half-time, it was under for 2-1. He just go around to every player and just, "Come on, you bastard."
Jonah, he went round to every player and put the fire in them, saying, "We ain't giving up." He really scared them.
With Vinny's never say die words ringing in their ears, Holzman staged an amazing second-half comeback with Mark scoring 4 goals.
We turned the tie around and we won 5-2. And there were scenes here that I've never seen before in my life. The whole town went crazy. It was unbelievable scenes that day.
Jonah had demonstrated a remarkable ability to galvanise a team. The two Johnny foreigners were accorded hero status.
We had free food, free apartment, free cars, and when we would go into town just to buy a newspaper, it took about 2 hours to get into town because people were stopping us, wanting to talk to us.
The Swedish experience transformed Jones. He'd gone there a novice and was voted the Division Player of the Year. He'd tasted the lifestyle, adoration and the rewards of being a pro.
When Vinny came to Holmsund, I think it was a boy, but 6 months later, he was a man. Wimbledon
Football Club were one of the unlikely success stories of the modern game. In 10 years, they had emerged from non-league obscurity to reach the first division of the Football League, making the most of limited resources.
We was a load of players that hadn't done very well and been released by other clubs, and or come from non-league teams, and that was it. Everyone had a point to prove.
Last week, didn't they, with the offside? So you're just going to have to look along the line before you go in, because if you just run straight in...
Dave Bassett was the father of a bunch of football orphans, whom he moulded into a team. He'd promised Jones a trial if he did well in Sweden, and he was true to his word.
He played a few reserve games, and his enthusiasm rubbed off, and we just felt that he was worth taking a chance.
His first ever First Division match at Nottingham Forest was a disaster, the game largely passing him by in a 3-2 defeat. But his home debut was a storybook affair. Pitched against the mighty Manchester United, he scored the only goal of the game to become an overnight headline grabber.
It's a crazy game, ain't it a shame, but I keep on playing.
Crucially, he revelled in the unique atmosphere of the club, who thought nothing of training with the army to boost team spirit.
Control your bodies, only control a ball when you can't control your bodies!
We were built on a team that was going to be together, and it had to be together, and everybody was in it together. You know, I used to like them to have the physical confrontation and have a bit of fun, you know, like boys do really. You know, we'd sometimes have rugby scrums, or, you know, we'd have, you know, some sort of contest where it was, you know, well, it ended up in a fight.
Having found his football family, Vinny soon became leader of the pack, and he took the laddish, aggressive culture to new heights, or depths.
They were training and Jonah gave me a sign of some description, so I V-signed back. And the next minute there was about 8 of them all jumped on top of me, Vinny the leader, and broke 4 ribs. And they thought I was joking. I weren't at the time, it was quite painful. But that's the way it was, you know, you lived and died by the sword in those days, you know, and nobody was exempt from being beaten up, kicked or thrown in the river or hung upside down over boats, which I've been done many a time before.
There was one time when we went to Lilleshall Treatment of Injury Centre, and the guy, we'd been working out really hard, the two of us, for like 2 weeks, and they gave us a night out. But they had us chaperoned by one of the PTIs there. And so he come out and he had a few beers with us in the local pub where everyone used to take. Then coming 11 o'clock, we fancied going out again. But he weren't too happy with it, the guy in charge. So he told us, no, we're definitely going back. And we had a kid driving us, and the PTI was trying to get us in the back. Said, no. So we got hold of him, stuck him in the boot. And we drove to, I think it's Cannock, the disco up by the leisure centre. And all the way up there we could hear the banging on the boot, so we said he'd be alright when he gets out. So we got there, opened the boot, let him out. This big PTI's jumped out, he was claustrophobic. We didn't know, so he's jumped out, he's having a panic attack, screaming and shouting and really making a racket. So I said, Johnny, you have to shut him up. So Jonas hit him, knocked him out, and we put him back in the boot, went into the disco and didn't come out for another 2 hours.
As he'd done in Sweden, Vinny found a soulmate. But his friendship with former Bernardo's boy John Fashanu was to prove deeper and more lasting than any he'd had before.
We had similar backgrounds in as much as we grew up basically on our own. I love the guy, I make no bones about it. Vinny's somebody I love dearly, he was my next brother, When I lost a brother, Vinny replaced him. He was somebody who I like to feed off. I like to feed off his will to win.
Fash was, although Fash again was a black belt in karate, but Vinny was streetwise. Vinny knew what was going on.
And we had an unspoken law that we look after each other and we honour each other, which we did. And there was many times when it really kicked off, I knew I'd got Vinny behind me. That was pretty nice to know.
It wasn't just a case of looking out for each other. They introduced threats as a deliberate strategy against illustrious and more gifted opponents.
We would intimidate players, the opponents. I think we intimidated referees. I think we intimidated linesmen. We had it to a fine art.
Play the ball. Now,
even Bassett, who'd instigated and whipped up the crazy gang spirit, had trouble controlling him.
We lost at Arsenal 3-1, and Steve Williams, who was playing for Arsenal at that particular time, was mouthing off at the end about our style of football and how useless we were, etc. And I must confess, I got a bit of the ump and pointed out to him that there was a return leg at Plough Lane over the Easter, and he might get his comeuppance then. To me at that time, I'd forgotten all about it, but Vinny was walking off at the same time. He'd remembered it. And when we played at Arsenal on that Easter Monday, we played there, and all of a sudden Vinny's going, Williams is going to get it.
I think the word was that he was meant to sort me out. Okay.
And I pointed out that I didn't want him to do that, and I expected him to behave himself. Unfortunately, Vinny was in his first season, and he's poleaxed an Arsenal player and in front of the referee and got sent off, and I wasn't happy about it. And at half time, when the team had gone back out, I've had a right go at Vinny and said, you've reduced us to 10 men, we're losing the game, we're likely to lose the game. He said, well, Williams had to take it. I said, yeah, but that was Graham Rickshaw knocked out. And he then looked at the programme and said, blimey, I've got the pictures muddled up.
7 months after giving Jones his big break, Bassett announced he was leaving the club. Yet the manager's departure was just a precursor to the greatest triumph in Vinny's football career.
You got one or two scars over here.
His girlfriend.
Yeah, you should see the other boys. You should see the boys in the red.
Up until Bassett's departure, only the football world was aware of the emerging hard man at Wimbledon Football Club. But in the spring of 1988, a photographer captured Vinny Jones' unique man-marking of a young Paul Gascoigne, which was published around the world. With his aggressive snarl and a harsh new crop look, a conscious image was taking shape. It was just as a new manager was starting his mission to bring Jones and Wimbledon to heel.
I inherited a very, very naughty teenager. Not only in Wimbledon Football Club, but perhaps in Vincent Jones. He's not been brought up in the normal footballing apprentice background, and we've got to try and educate him. I tell you what, it took some educating.
Nevertheless, under Gould, Wimbledon marched towards undreamed of success. With Vinny at its heart, the team from nowhere incredibly reached the cup final against the giants of the modern game. In Vinny's mind, his whole ethos of how to play the game had been vindicated.
We loved the build-up, from winning the semi-final, We had 5 weeks of, hysteria type thing. We was building up to the cup final. We were looking forward to it. We had all the media interest. We were the paupers. We were the boys. Again, we were the ones that do something silly. Wimbledon would still do it.
Liverpool's 21st appearance in this famous old stadium in 15 seasons. And of course the first FA Cup final appearance of Wimbledon.
We're talking in terms of how many Liverpool would win by, and I can remember certainly writing a piece saying that it was important that Liverpool didn't just beat them sneak or 1-0, that they really wiped the floor with this bunch of Philistine upstarts.
Liverpool were runaway league champions and had a hard man of their own, Steve McMahon.
The cup final was Vinny's chance to put himself in the picture. There was a lot in the build-up to the game with, the Vinny Jones, Steve McMahon. How will the battle go? Who will win it? Will it influence the way the game will go?
Vinny, what about you? What about the game today?
Yeah, we've plenty of that going on.
It took 10 minutes for Jones to nail his man.
Oh, that was a nasty challenge by Vinny Jones.
Vinny ended up with a cut under his eye and a little bruise, but we're saying that first challenge give us the edge in the game. And it wasn't that Macca wasn't in the game, but Vinny felt that he'd drawn first blood, although he'd actually had blood drawn on him first.
The Dons were on an incredible high. Vinny and the lads wanted to ram the victory down the media's throats, and Gould saw the warning signs.
I was well aware that Vincent could be a problem, because this is a dream come true for him, like 18 months ago being on a building site, now all of a sudden beating Liverpool, and I had to make sure that I got to him very, very quickly.
He's going to make quite sure that they go about this in exactly the right way. You could almost see him saying that to the other players. Calm down, show a bit of dignity, make them remember you for the best possible reasons. Look at that, that's good management. Vinny Jones will be a hard man to control at this moment, I'll tell you.
I said, Vincent, control your emotions as much as you can. Poetic words, really, because unfortunately, he got hold of his winner's medal, got hold of his genitals in front of the television cameras, and it was shown throughout Great Britain and the world. I got mail in from all over the country saying it was the most disgraceful behaviour ever witnessed in a FA Cup final.
Jones was oblivious to any disgrace. He had a winner's medal and the scars to prove it.
You got one or two scars up here?
His girlfriend. Yeah, you should see the other boys. You should see the boys in the red.
Vinny was on top of the world, but following a series of self-inflicted wounds, he would be gone in less than a year. In a post-party game 2 days after the cup final, Jones decided to go in goal.
All of a sudden, the crowd behind the goal were shouting, and Vincent, Vincent, show us your... Vincent, Vincent, show us your backside. So he did. He pulled his shorts down and the crowd were in raptures, weren't they? And at half-time, the referee blew his whistle. And to a man, they got together as a unit and they ran to the halfway line. And I knew what they were going to do. I just knew what they were going to do. I couldn't get out the stand quick enough. As I got down onto the touchline, they did it.
That cost the club a £10,000 fine. Then in a pre-season friendly, Jones was sent off for elbowing an amateur opponent in the face. To try to control his unruly charge, Gould, uniquely, slapped a ban on his own player for the start of the season. Weeks later, in a match at White Hart Lane, Jones went thundering into a tackle on England international Gary Stevens, causing him a serious knee injury. The tackle was widely condemned by the media.
Stevens was certainly never the same player again. It almost certainly foreshortened his career. And I remember thinking, at very best, it was a reckless tackle. I thought it was an appalling tackle.
Faced with a player clearly out of control, Gould tried to find the reason for his aggression. The manager suspected that Jones carried the anger from his disrupted childhood.
He loved his father, you know, that was so evident as time went on, and I began to know him more deeply as a person, not just a footballer. I think all homes with broken marriages leave an effect on individuals, and we knew we had a potential footballer that had problems at the back of his mind.
He's always been seeking a family, he's always been seeking love, he's always been seeking relationship, stability. These are the traits of somebody who's insecure. And I think because of our background, we are fighters.
Gould's patience finally ran out after Jones was sent off for headbutting Everton's Kevin Ratcliffe. It was time to cast the rotten apple out.
In the end, I said, I think it's time that Vincent left Wimbledon Football Club.
He was desperate to show his game wasn't all unbridled aggression.
The second division was a rat race. We were desperate to get out. You needed somebody to generate some sound, some noise, some excitement. And Vinny Jones was one of those sort of players. He could do that.
It was my wife who'd read the paper. She was inside and I'd been outside playing with the kids in the pool. And they told me that Vinny Jones had signed for Leeds United. And my first reaction was, this could be trouble. I thought it was useless. I thought it was just a big thug with a long throw who intimidated people.
At first, it seemed the Leeds captain's worst fears were confirmed.
He thought when he came to the club that he was there to batter the living daylights of any person he played against, and he thought that would be good enough for the side. And in a pre-season friendly, I remember him after 20 minutes, he smacked somebody in the face from a Belgian side, and he thought it was great, and he thought he was showing to the crowd and showing to us how hard he was. And I had a word with him after the game, and I said, if you think that's going to help us, you've got another thing coming, because somebody will get to see that. We'll end up with 10 men, and at my age I don't want to be doing any extra running for you, so you can become a celebrity.
Leeds were managed by Howard Wilkinson, a tough disciplinarian like Vinny's previous boss Bobby Gould.
I just said, look, that's not how we do things here, that's not why you've been brought here. You don't need to do that. You've got other strengths, and let's build on them. You know, you don't always have to fight the world.
Jones showed that he could knuckle down. It was to be his most prolific year in football as the team raced towards promotion and he became a local hero.
This is the story I'm gonna tell, so I hope you can listen well. It's not that bad, it's got to be said, but you may think I'm in the head. King of rap, the real soul man, and I'm the one that they've tried to ban. Don't worry that you may get in trouble, we're all doing the Vinny Shuffle.
That's without doubt his best period. And he played some lovely football, scored some good goals, and he was a joy to work with.
He was a very, very popular character. He was the only footballer of that generation that I remember when he came on the field, he went straight to where the disabled section was, and he shook hands, or patted their head, or said an encouraging word to the kids sitting there in wheelchairs. They idolised him. And the fans in the Kop, they thought, you know, he was next to God.
He proved he could behave, because I think in his 18 months there he got 2 bookings. More importantly, he proved he could play within that team as part of that team, that he wasn't in there as some sort of hatchet man, he was in there as a footballer.
And yet, as they were securing promotion, the manager was preparing to dump him.
Howard Wilkinson recognised that the football that we expect from a first division team is totally different from getting up the second division. Howard felt that Vinny did a very good job for Leeds. It was time to move on, both for the club and for Vinny Jones.
The bad boy had shown he could behave, but it had been thrown back in his face. The disappointment was crushing. The finesse and behaviour of his Leeds days soon disappeared. The next phase of his football career was notable only for gaining the fastest bookings ever recorded. Playing for Sheffield United, the yellow card came after only 5 seconds against Manchester City. And then for Chelsea in a cup tie, he even beat that record. He was booked within 3. Yes, 1, 2, 3 seconds. Having been rejected by 3 clubs in as many years, in 1992, Vinny was finally accepted back into his football family.
The board at Chelsea made it impossible for me to stay, really, at the end. You know, they paid up my contract, so therefore I had no option.
It was 1992, the new Premier League had been launched and Vinny Jones arrived back at Wimbledon promising the fans he was a reformed character. But in his first match back, the new man lasted just half an hour. The Dons manager Joe Kinnear thought making Vinny captain might keep him out of trouble. He needn't have bothered. He was sent off for fighting in his debut as skipper. All but one of his 11 dismissals in club football came while wearing the Wimbledon shirt, reinforcing the view that their unique style brought out the worst in him. By now, the image of Jones was nothing more than a vicious thug. Soon after rejoining his beloved Dons, a video hit the streets in which Jones boasted of how to cheat and injure opponents.
There's always the poke in the eye when you're not looking, or when the ball's up the other end of the field, the centre-half lays out the centre-forward with a right-hander. The one where you're following the play and he passes the ball off. Everybody follows the ball and then you just come in and follow down with your studs on the back of his Achilles down the calf. It's always a nice one.
I thought it was cretinous, actually. I mean, it was in I suppose in Vinny's image, really. You know, it was catch penny and opportunistic and obviously done for money.
The FA fined him £20,000, a record for an individual, and Jones had to pay it out of his own pocket. But in commercial terms, the episode proved a PR bonanza.
I always feel that negative publicity is worth its weight in gold. It's £20,000 worth of newspaper space and more. And more. It was a story that knocked its way out of the back pages and made its way into the news pages. It was pure oxygen.
After the Hard Men video controversy, Vinny Jones was firmly established as the unacceptable face of British football. But with the media on his back, his best mate gave him some shrewd business advice.
And I said to Vinny, look, Vinny, all this negative publicity you're getting, change it and turn it round and make it into a positive force. I said, if ever there was somebody built to be a baddie, you're the guy.
Fash was the presenter of the hit show Gladiators and persuaded the producers to invite Vinny on. He launched into a showbiz career with the same passion as his legendary tackles, playing to the gallery along the way.
Hi Vinny and welcome.
Well, I do like to bend the rules every now and then, and sometimes it helps us to win and sometimes we don't get nothing out of it, just a lot of problems.
Now you're not gonna stick to the rules tonight then?
Probably not.
In the Powerball pitch, it's Vinny and Oliver. And they're going to be facing Warrior, Saracen and Cobra.
We go into a huddle
pretend that we're talking about how to bash them up. And there's this ball came over and hit me in the head, and it was Vinny.
Oh, that's a promising start. Throws the ball at Saracen. Lost none of his charm, mind you. It was a good shot.
He was trying to intimidate me, so we said, right, we'll pick on Vinny Jones.
Let's play ball.
When the game started, he was going for it, big time. He was a bit crazy.
Come on, you two. Come on, 40 stone of gladiators.
So every time I threw him on the floor, Warrior, 22 stones, would run over and jump on top of Vinny.
Ready to Saracen and Warrior. No wonder they call him crazy. Straight in again goes Vinny and straight down.
But after 3 times of that, Vinny got a bit annoyed. So after the game had ended, it started and it all kicked off. And
Wish you could go on for another 2 minutes, but there we are. Time up. That was good stuff. And Vinny gets nothing. Saracen, I'll take your bet.
Vinny scored no points.
2-1 against Vinny, but you've got to ask yourself who started it. Only Vinny Jones would be stupid enough to offer out 60 stones of gladiator.
For the first time in its history, Jones reduced a family show to a football-style brawl. And by refusing to edit the incident out, the producers gave prime-time exposure to his whole image.
Looked like he came from the Lucy Clayton School of Deportment for young ladies. Look at this.
Jones began spreading his wings into all areas of showbiz. He went on the Mrs. Merton show, where, invited to play up to the hard man image, he doled out the charm, showing he could play the lovable rogue to a time-honoured script.
Smart people go into the showers early, because that's when they're off.
Do you ever wee in the bath for laughs?
The thing is, that's why I get sent off. I can just wee in the bath. The boys come in and say, oh, we've got yellow bubble bath today. And I'm going, yeah, lovely.
You're so gross, Vinny.
For the first time in his adult life, Vinny was happily settled, with a wife and family who soon became an essential part of his public image. His wife Tanya had come back into his life by chance. He'd known her since childhood, but during his Chelsea days, he found himself living a few doors away. He discovered she'd undergone a heart transplant following complications at the birth of her daughter. When she needed further surgery, Vinny paid her a friendly visit in hospital.
She was longing to go home, but the doctors, of course, said, no, it's impossible, you can't. Vinny arrives, pleads with the doctors, literally lifts Tanya from the hospital bed, carries her out to the car, takes her home, cares for her, cares for Kaylee as well, Tanya's daughter. The relationship developed and eventually they were married.
It was the football wedding of the year, and Vinny shrewdly cashed in, giving the news of the world exclusive access to his fairy story white wedding, and even selling his stag do to the Daily Mirror. The sentimental couple honeymooned in Juan-les-Pins, the destination chosen from the lyrics of their favourite record.
Summer vacation, you go to Juan-les-Pins with your carefully designed.
The whole event revealed Vinny's devotion and generosity to those who had stood by him in earlier years. For his stag party, he flew 60 of his mates to Dublin for the time of their lives. And by asking John Moore to be best man, he acknowledged the enormous debt he owed the man who took him in during his troubled teenage years.
And that's the type Vinny is. Never mind what reputation people want to give him. That's Vinny Jones. Heart of gold. And that's a lot of people tell you that.
2 months after we got married, my wife wrote her car off. I rang him up, and the first thing he done was give me his Mercedes. I borrowed it off of him for 6 months. He said, you can have it as long as you like.
By 1995, he was at the height of his earning powers as a football personality, even having his own column for the News of the World. In February of that year, they sent him to Dublin, where England were playing the Republic of Ireland. But in one of the most notorious episodes involving English fans, the match was abandoned after rioting on the terraces. Ted Oliver, a reporter on the Daily Mirror, had been working on the story and had retired to his hotel near the ground.
one of my colleagues spotted Mr. Jones and some other people coming towards us and offered to introduce me. I'd never met Jones before. I'd seen him on the football pitch, on TV, but that was it. As he approached, I stood up, being polite, and before I got a chance to say anything to him, never mind hello, he grabbed me by the arm, pulled me close towards him, and sunk his teeth into my nose, causing to bleed quite heavily, and then gave it quite a severe shaking.
It was like watching a dog with a bone, really. And then his head came back, and there was blood running from Ted's nose.
It bled for a couple of hours afterwards, and I was very worried in case there would be some sort of infection.
Jones' unprovoked assault was likened to the behaviour of the hooligans on the terraces. Back in England, he became a hunted man.
Vinny Jones was back training with Wimbledon this morning and, when questioned by reporters, gave a rather lame excuse for his actions.
It's a prank that's gone wrong. It was, I must emphasise, there was nothing malicious about it whatsoever.
Jones' main concern, however, was the possible impact of the debacle on his wife Tanya, whose heart condition needed constant monitoring. Besieged by the media, he later told his biographer that he'd even come close to committing suicide.
He was disgusted with himself, and when he returned from Dublin, Vinny took to his bed and he assumed the kind of fetal position, curled up almost like a child, that he was perhaps beginning to put her life in danger. And he told me then that he went to his gun cabinet, he took a double-barrel shotgun and walked to woods, fully intending to blow his brains out. And he went and he sat on an old oil barrel, I think it was, with the gun loaded, and sat and thought for a few moments. Suddenly there was a movement and he was distracted. And it was his little Jack Russell Terrier who'd come from nowhere. And he said that distracted him sufficiently to suddenly come to his senses, thinking of Tanya coming back home and stumbling over what he intended leaving.
However traumatised he claims to have been by the event, it had no long-term impact on his own behaviour. In 1997, he launched a similar unprovoked violent assault.
The footballer Vinny Jones has been found guilty of assaulting a neighbour in a dispute over a garden stile. Magistrates heard how the Welsh international punched, kicked and bit Timothy Gear, causing actual bodily harm and criminal damage.
27-year-old Tim Gear told the court he'd gone to bed in the caravan on his family's farm and was woken by swearing and banging. When he opened the door, the former Wimbledon player bit him on the head, then kicked him and stamped on his face.
Vinny Jones' attack on Tim Gear was almost like a scene from a gangster movie. In fact, the night Jones carried out the assault, he was only hours away from his acting debut. He was released from the police cells at dawn and whisked off to the film set for the first day of filming Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels.
He'd never been on a film set, really. So, he was acting in it, the day was all about him, and he'd spent the night in the Nick. So, the pressure was on him on the first day.
The movie has become the defining moment in Vinny's career. He was a natural, able to turn on the intimidation just as readily as he had on the football field.
Vinny was playing Vinny. When I saw the screen and I saw Vinny, that was the same person. Those mean, tough guy faces. That was Vinny on a Saturday at 3 o'clock.
There is one more thing.
He even came up with a key line of dialogue.
It's been emotional.
As soon as he said that, I thought, wow, that's Jonesy. Because I remember how that came about. Jonesy went flying in like a madman with Paul Ince. And I followed in as well. It was almost a three-way tackle and we were all there. And Ince was down and he got up. And Jonesy sort of walked away from me and said, hey, mate, it's been emotional.
In Snatch, the follow-up to Lock, Stock, Vinny is still adding credibility to his tough guy role by drawing on real-life experiences.
There's one scene where he pisses in someone's pocket without them noticing. It happened in real life, actually. And someone was driving him mad, and he whipped out his Hampton, stuck it in someone's pocket, carried on the conversation, drip-dried himself in their pocket after he'd finished. and wandered off in another direction. And it was only when when Vinny was reaching the door that the character realised that he had a damp leg. And we've lost that scene, which is a shame because it was a crowd pleaser, but it was in a whole load of stuff that we didn't need.
It's not just his new showbiz pals who condone Vinny's yobbish behaviour. In current laddish culture, the Diamond Geezer is king. Just witness the audience's reaction after an intruder invades the stage at the Brits.
You're fucking wasting my drink, now fuck off!
There was only one man a harassed Rolling Stone could call on for help.
Vinny, where's Vinny? I'll fucking get that.
Just before we start nominations, I would like to say to you that the fella that threw a drink over my mate Ronnie Wood is completely fucking salted.
Vinny Jones is now applauded as the archetypal bad boy of popular culture. But whether this newfound favour with the masses is anything more than a passing fad is debatable.
I think one of the great fallacies is to think that Vinny Jones is hero worshipped. I think he has a sort of celebrity value. It's a sort of celebrity obsession. Jones has made himself famous, therefore people want to look at him and be associated even with him. But the idea that he's amazingly popular, I think, is another thing.
To all intents and purposes, Vinny Jones is well and truly sorted. He's rubbing shoulders with the stars and he's raking in a fortune from commercials like the One-to-One campaign and from his films. He's just announced he's buying a mansion in Hollywood. His days of dossing and dead-end jobs are gone for good. But for all his fame and fortune, there's no evidence that he's exorcised the demons of those early years. Just weeks before the launch of his next movie, he was involved in a pavement punch-up in London's West End with the Wimbledon striker John Hartson. It was allegedly a fight to see who is the hardest.
15 years as a professional football player.
The brawl serves as a reminder to those who have witnessed Vinny Jones' darker side that for all his carefully cultivated media persona, he seems incapable of controlling or overcoming his greatest foe, himself.
And again.
You can take the man out of the gutter, but you can't take the gutter out of the man.
Again.
He's not going to change now, no matter what veneer of Hollywood or movie star about him. He's still the Vinny Jones who bites people's noses and kicks people on the football field.
I worry because he has a tendency to press the self-destruct button. It only comes once in a while, but boy, when it comes, it comes.